Hi everyone, this is our Module 3 assignment for EDL 954. My name is Sydney Graff and I am a part of the Goddard School District USD 265, and I'm going to be sharing some data with you and digging into my district's revenues that are obtained from federal and state sources. So going into that data, we're going to start with assessed valuation. This relates to the taxable value of properties. So within this slide, you can also see the LOB or the line of business values. These are the values that are typically tied to serving a specific need or a specific purpose within the district. So sometimes you'll hear people talk about the line items or things like that. This is where some of that comes from. So next we have our total cash balance. This is the amount of money that's on hand. Our total for the Goddard District from the 21-22 school year was 19,490,738. And then you can see how this is broken down into the different categories on this slide here. And these are usually put into place by a district to offset any unplanned cash flow. So when you look at everything that's listed on this slide, you can see that some of those are at zero and others are much higher, which makes a lot of sense when it's cash that's planned for something that's unplanned. So a great example of this is the area of nutrition services, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. The cost of food and sometimes the supply chain was really unknown, as well as some of the healthcare needs. So you can see here how some of those areas definitely have a higher cash balance than others, which would make sense for the district's needs at the time. So general state aid is our next area to focus in on. This is also known as state foundation aid, and these amounts are paid to the district during the school year. State aid is typically determined by taking the general fund and then subtracting it from the local tax revenue. So one area that was interesting to me, being a special education administrator, is of course special education state aid, and those funds are also distributed throughout the school year. Those are usually done in quarterly payments throughout the school year, and there's a lot of reporting that goes into that to be sent back to the state. Something that's also interesting about that line, though, is that it is only distributed to individuals that are part of an interlocal or a cooperative, and these funds are then put into the general fund to help offset the costs of that interlocal or of that cooperative. You can also see the line items for the supplemental general state aid as well on this slide. Moving into total expenditures, this is every single expense that it takes to run a school district. It is the total. So for the Goddard School District, you can see it takes quite a bit of money to make sure everything is running, from our buildings to our buses and everything in between that it goes into making a school district run the way that you need to. You can also see how how our FTE of our enrollment comes into play for total expenditures, as well as where some of those other amounts come from. So going into free and induced enrollment, the Goddard School District has about 20% of its student population as free and reduced. So this kind of can give you a general idea of what some of our economic demographics may look like within the Goddard School District. And as we all know, free and reduced impacts, of course, money coming in and out of the district in multiple ways, including receiving different at-risk funds. Excuse me. Now we have our headcount enrollment that's broken down per grade. Goddard didn't have a total headcount listed, but you can see how they have other items and areas broken down. So this information is very important in determining finances for a school district, especially when it comes from the state level or the federal level, because a lot of different areas of aid or valuation for a district are done on a per pupil basis as part of determining those money amounts that are ultimately dispersed back to your district. Here you can see our kindergarten format. So the impact of this information, I would say, looks a little bit different now than it did in years past because recently the state of Kansas changed um, the requirements around kindergarten. I don't know if requirements is the right word, but they made full day kindergarten available and free to all students. So we saw, of course, a huge influx in enrollment of all day kindergarten. And at least in the Goddard School District, we really don't have any half day students anymore or intermittent attendance of kindergarten students. So they attend for that full day, which of course impacts our funding that we receive as well. Next, we have our full prices for meals, broken down by breakfast and lunch based on the different levels. One thing that I learned through this assignment was that our local school boards are actually the ones who set the prices for these meals on an annual basis. They do have to put a lot of consideration into these meal prices, such as the cost of food, the cost of labor, other costs, maybe the equipment to make that food, the impact of the price on program participation. So, the amount of kids who want to receive food from school, and then general fund subsidies, federal and state reimbursement rates, all these different kinds of things come into play when that board is determining the appropriate amount to charge for these meals. Student costs can vary per grade level. As you can see, it does for the Goddard School District, which is based more on building level than grade level per se. Sometimes, if the costs of things that it takes to provide these meal increase, then the school board may determine to, of course, increase these meal prices as well to ensure that the costs of operations are covered. Moving into mill rates, these are used to calculate our property taxes. There is a school finance law in place that requires all general fund rates to be set at 20 mil. Capital outlay is outlay that's charged to a long-term asset account. Capital outlay also includes just expenditures that result in the acquisition of fixed assets. It can go towards existing buildings, improvements to building sites, construction on buildings, additions to buildings. Energy conservation has been a big push in the state of Kansas for the last 10 years. So any retrofitting that would be done to buildings to help aid in that could also go on capital outlay, as well as any big remodels, new equipment, different furnishings that might be needed for any educational facility within the district. Those could all go towards capital outlay. The school district might make an annual tax levy at a mill rate not to exceed the statutorily prescribed mill rate upon the assessed taxable tangible property in our school district for the purposes that are specified in some of those policies and laws that are outlined around mill rates. So moving into our personnel, here you can see all of the certified staff that are within the Goddard School District and everything and everyone that it takes to meet our district's needs and meet our students' needs in order to ensure the success of our school district. So our total is down at the bottom in bold, and we have 586.4 certified staff working for our Goddard School District. This is also pulled from the 2021-2022 school year. And now you can see our non-certified personnel who help with running our school district as well. Something that I found interesting was that the amount of certified staff compared to non-certified staff is honestly about the same, but that puts us at over 1,000 employees just to ensure that everything is going well and that we're setting up our students for success. So here you can see our average salaries. Our salary of our superintendent is listed there. I did notice that it is one of our largest salaries for a superintendent in the state of Kansas. He has been with us for a while though, and has also been one of our superintendents of the year and does a phenomenal job, in my opinion, for our school district. There's our principals' average salaries. We have 12 principals, I believe. maybe 7 or 8 vice principals. So there's the average of their salaries all put together there. And then, of course, our teachers' average salary is listed there as well. So moving into our school bonds, we did have a big bond project for our school district several years ago. So here you can see from July of 2020 to June of 2021, so that 2021 school year, kind of where all of our amounts from that school bond are still sitting on what we owe back to the state, or maybe what we've refinanced from some of that as well. We had a lot of buildings that were able to benefit from these school bonds and ultimately just make them safer places for our students to learn and our staff to teach. So it was definitely needed and was a great bond. And here we have our transportation. Again, this is another area that the state level and federal level look at the cost per pupil. Depending on how many pupils, of course, we do ultimately transport within our district, and then the total cost of transportation for our district as well. Another very high area of costs. So here's a couple of references that I used just to make sure that I was understanding all of the different financial terms correctly and where those come in and come from. And I thank you all for listening to this presentation, and I look forward to learning more about each of your districts. Thanks.